This is the Kestrel Country Podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Kestrel Country. Dr. Wilson.
Well,
Dr. Wilson,
Gordon.
Thank you. Gordon. Neighbor. Friend.
Yeah, neighbor.
Neighbor, professor, and all sorts of things.
Thanks for joining us today.
And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it.
Well, springtime has us feeling like getting outside.
Yes.
Everyone's getting outside.
Me too.
So maybe we just wanted to talk. So, we talk about people, places, and events all around the Palouse is kind of our tagline. But we should talk a little bit about animals as well.
And plants.
But as relates to the area,
Mike loves animals a lot.
Right. Well, yeah, most people do.
I do love animals. But yeah, I would love to talk to you about, maybe first give us a little bit of an intro, who you are, what you do,
and how you came
brought
to
you
Moscow.
to the area.
Yeah. Well, I've been here almost 20 years. I came 2003
Yeah.
in the early summer.
Same with me.
Yeah.
Same
You
here.
had been here before, though.
Yes. We moved here when I was 10. So 71, and then fifth grade on through college in Moscow. Then got my first teaching job in Salt Lake, and then little stint in Laramie, back to Moscow for grad school, and then quick bio, and did my master's in entomology, which is study of bugs, and then worked in bacteriology as a lab tech for a couple years, and then taught at Liberty University for almost 12 years.
Wow.
And then in 2003 came out. From 91 to 2003, I was at Liberty.
Okay.
So, that's a quick flyby.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? What brought you here?
I teach biology, also known as natural history at New St. Andrews, and I'm a senior fellow of natural history. But for those that haven't heard that term, other than its association with museums, it's more or less biology, more from an observational perspective rather than experimental. So it's more or less a synonym, but a little bit broader and fuzzier edged.
Yeah.
Allows a little more room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also doing, now we had James Engerbretson on a little while back to talk about Riot and the dance. So you're doing some of that as well.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm the narrator.
Are you the writer too?
Well, actually, not the first 2 episodes, but the forthcoming one, both Nate and I wrote it together. So Nate did the first draft, then I went over it, edited, and then sent it back to him. So it was really fun to add stuff and weave in my voice a little bit more.
Yeah.
So,
well,
but that hasn't been
enjoying. We've enjoyed them.
Oh yeah, the kids
Really
enjoy
fun.
them. It's really fun.
And cool to see all the various places. Do you have a favorite place that you have gone with the filming of it? So far?
The exotic nature. I really enjoyed being in the cloud forest. The thing about any location you pick, it's very easy to get the impression that everything you step outside in some exotic destination, and the first thing you flip, you find a bunch of things. And because documentaries give you this idea that it's just so packed, because, well, they're not going to bore you with all this footage of nothing.
Right.
But that's reality.
Yeah.
When I take my students on field trips, it's really a lot of nothing. Okay. I mean, there's some good spots, but that actually makes it more fun because when it's a winning ticket after 50 empty scratch tickets, it's more exciting. Not that I'm advocating that. It's just, I think it's the same kind of feel.
Yeah.
It's nothing. Well, and you flip a log or you flip a rock or you're saying to yourself, probably nothing, but maybe.
Right.
And then when you get some critter, it's great. But being in Sri Lanka was great. Seeing some exotic things over there. But ironically, a lot of people think, oh, it's great to go somewhere else, But I really, really like a sense of place. Mm-hmm. And even though there were some cool exotic things that I saw elsewhere, I have this uncanny love of my home. I'm sort of a hobbit.
Yeah.
And I always felt like even though this cool, whatever is a radiated or star tortoise, cool things, I just felt more not a part of that place. And felt like there are so many people that know this place better than I am. Who am I to be the ambassador for their place? And it's fine. God allowed me to be that, but I love being here in the Palouse. Mm-hmm. Even though I've seen a lot of the things
that are
over and over again, but there's always these bucket list things here that I haven't caught. So
yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I appreciate about that is we're talking about kids getting outside and loving nature too, is the frog that became the Capri Sun pouch in that episode.
Yep.
That was here, right?
That was here. That can happen here.
Okay. Because that was
Shall we say that was a studio production.
Okay.
It was a local frog. It was an ordered giant water bug. But those giant water bugs are here.
And it happens.
And it happens here.
Yeah.
But it would have just been a really, really, really long time to try to capture that. So we got it in the
a little magic, a little production magic.
Yeah,
Right.
little production magic, but yeah.
But still, for the kids to be able to have that understanding of their own backyard being so much bigger than they realize.
Oh man, it is so much bigger.
Yeah.
And I really want to get kids to understand that it's wonderful where you're at.
I like that.
It is wonderful where you're at. There's a ton of birds to get to know. I'm more of a herp guy, but I'm learning birds. I like to catch things. I like to have them in maybe it's because, with birds, it's a fleeting glimpse through your binoculars. And it's great. And I've got binoculars and I want to really encourage that. But I really like, there's insects, there's reptiles, there's amphibians, there's birds, there's lots of plants. And I want to really encourage that.
Well, and then what they do, I think that's so fascinating. Just the last couple of days, there is a woodpecker outside our house, but he has not been pecking on wood. He has been just banging on our mailbox.
Yeah, we've been hearing that too, because yes. I don't know if it's the same one. You're down the road a bit.
Yeah.
But he's banging on our mailbox, and I keep wondering, is he hoping he'll get through? Or is he just really enjoying that he's making a sound?
Right.
Yeah. Well, do you know?
I don't.
Is it? You don't know. That's not a thing. He might just not be the smartest.
He might just have had a
woodpecker
couple.
on the block.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know woodpecker behavior well enough to know whether they're banging to call somebody in or call another woodpecker of the same species in or what. But
yeah. Well, that idea of kind of exploring your backyard, loving that sense of place that's part of what we're trying to do. I mentioned James a little bit ago. But part of what we're doing with the Kestrel Country stuff is trying to treat some of our local places as if they're this big, right? Like Yosemite gets the cool posters. Well, let's do that for Idler's Rest or for some of these places.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite place to go, or maybe on the kid line of thought, a place that you would say is a great place to get out and
Kamiak Butte's good. That's in Whitman County over the border into Washington, but it's a half-hour drive. Idler's Rest. There's a place, Headwater Trail.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where a lot of, but right now that's closed just because Bennett is doing some work up there.
Gotcha.
But because I went there Saturday and had to turn around, or was at the parking area and had to turn around. So there's places, the more you're willing to explore maps, Google Maps, or even just local places that tell you this is a good trail, you know. I sort of already know those places, and there may be all sorts of online resources tell you, okay, these are some good trails. Most of the time it's for mountain bikers, but you can still hike them. And the more you know, because we're up in northern Idaho, the species diversity is not super incredible, especially reptiles and amphibians. So the more you diversify, whether it's wildflowers, animals, birds, the more you are open to getting to know other groups than just your favorites, the more enriched your experience will be. If you're just like, you know, reptiles or bust, you know, then you might be disappointed.
For, you know, people who are afraid of snakes, you might be encouraged.
This is why you live in Moscow.
Exactly, Mike.
Mike
north.
does not like snakes.
Move on north.
It is funny. One of the houses we lived at in town was backing up on Paradise Creek, and we got so many garter snakes. And Mike did not.
Yeah.
It helped a little bit, though. The first time I saw one out there, it was by the end of the summer. I was a little more acclimatized.
Might be genetic or something. But and so one of the things that can add to that tendency to get bored is to just think it's a frog or it's a snake, or let's say you're not afraid of snakes. But you just think, well, you've seen one snake, you've seen them all, or you've seen one frog, you've seen them all. And the more you know the local diversity, the more it's not just, oh, I caught a frog. It's like, I caught a Pacific chorus frog. As soon as you know the name, that gives you entree into a whole wealth of information. You can look it up. You get a whole wealth of information. The more you understand, once you have that name, that gives you a key to this wealth of information. If you don't know what it is, you're done.
Yeah.
You're just done. And it's the same with birds. If you get a positive ID, you might not know anything about that bird, but as soon as you get the positive ID, you can go online and you have entree to all sorts of great information if you so choose.
Yeah.
You might be just happy to just know what it is and be done. But once you know the depth of its life, its nesting, its behavior, its what does it eat, where does it live, what types of, is it a ground nester, is it a tree nester, is it a cavity nester, whatever. There's just so much depth for every creature. There's tons of depth. And so you get this depth for one creature, but you also have breadth if you know diversity and go, oh, there's like a half a dozen different types of snakes here. There's well over 100, birds. I'm sure I don't know the tally. I have a list of about 50 birds from my ornithology class that they try to see, but it's hard to see all of them. But yeah, the more you know, the more it opens up this panorama of stuff. And you're never too young to learn it. It's like some of this stuff, if you learn it as a kid, you could have a college level in knowledge of all of this stuff, and you don't even know you know that much because it's all organically learned. I remember when my daughter Brooke was 4, I was up on Tomer Butte and taught her, I was doing my master's in entomology, so I was teaching her stuff just organically. And so when she was walking with her Aunt Heather, my sister said, oh, look at the dragonfly. And my daughter Brooke, who's your age, Mike, said, no, that's a damselfly. It has a blue abdomen. It's not like kids can learn all sorts of stuff that I think, and it's unfortunate because it feels like a ton of stuff to learn as a college student if you don't know any of it. And it seems hard because you're stuffing in all this information. But if you just know it as you're a kid growing up, the local stuff, flora and fauna, it just makes it easy peasy.
So do you have you were doing it as a grad student or as, it was in your line of work, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it happened more organically.
Well,
do you have some ideas?
It sort of, I didn't learn it as a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
I had to learn it late because, I was interested as a kid, but I didn't learn it because my parents didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so the more we can encourage the parents to encourage their kids to get out and see it and find it and help identify it. And if you don't know, or if you don't have the resources, it's great to have people in the community that know. And there's even apps,
Yeah.
the apps make a lot of mistakes as far as identification unless you get real high level apps to take a picture and it identifies it for you, but often they get it wrong.
But even if there's just a guide, so for you mentioned when you were in before is it Merlin?
Yeah, the Merlin app
for birds.
That's really helpful.
I grew up with the old Audubon.
Yeah.
Or is it Peterson? No, what was the
Peterson's guide, Audubon. And the Sibley's.
And is that so? Are there similar guides like that for regional?
Yeah, there's a regional one for reptiles, Northwest, reptiles in Northwest or something like that, and then there's amphibians of the Pacific Northwest. So their regional ones are great.
As far as getting kids into it, some kids are going to be more naturally want to do that kind of thing and explore, but just sending them out with a guide and, hey, how many can you find?
Or a scavenger hunt.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas?
Well, one thing, especially there is a Northwest insects guide, but one thing about field guides is that they usually have to, except for amphibians, reptiles, they got most of them. But on things that have a gazillion species, they have to just pick the common ones. So you may be looking at something that is not in the field guide at all. And we tend to think, well, this has got to have everything in it. And so you find the best picture. Also, when you're not the professional, you get this sort of impressionistic thing of this critter, and you're not looking at the key characteristics. You just have this vague, well, it's this color and this color and this color, and you don't have a fine-tuned sense of shape and bill shape, and it's very easy to get things wrong. But it's best to just keep on honing your observation skills. If you do have somebody around, I know that I'm in our local community, there's a ton of people that send a picture to me, say, what's this?
Oh,
I love that.
Send it to Meredith. I've done that. Send it to Meredith, though.
I love doing that. If I can at least get it to family, maybe species, but Yeah, that's a lot of fun for me because I feel like, hey, that's my contribution to the community of identification of stuff. So that's great. But field guides is the next best thing if you don't have an expert handy, and just work at the observation skills.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. I've even had a professor at the U of I. He wrote a book on High Mountain Lake, and there was I looked at the herp section, and there was a number of mistakes. And this was a professor,
Right.
and I'm like, ooh, man.
Well, I think that, it's God's creation. So you start digging into anything and the complexity, like you were mentioning earlier. One, it makes you more interested in it. But two, I think it makes you feel so much smaller when you understand, oh my word, this is amazing. This bug has all of these features and compartments, or this bird can do all of this and and just knows how to build its nest. So I think that level of feeling teeny tiny, that everything
really, there's so much.
And developing that love of, like you said, a place and what's here. I have some of the same probably Hobbit proclivities. Just being, we even when we were down in the Grand Canyon and seeing all these different national parks. It's like, man, I really want to get home and show the kids, the St. Joe River and some of the canyons we have. They're not nearly as big, right? They're not as impressive, but they're ours to a degree, right? They feel like home. Or
like home.
I've spent a ton of time around elk, and yet watching a documentary that includes elk or the things in the backyard is just, I love it and fascinating.
Yeah,
and kids do love, right? That sense of discovery.
Yeah.
Is more like the excitement about, I saw this. I saw a...
And I like toads better than frogs. And here's why I like toads better than frogs. It's because they're dry, and then they get...
Yeah, they're not slimy.
Yeah, and they get these opinions, and, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I do like the exotic.
Yeah.
I just, like you, the Hobbit tendency. And I do appreciate it while I'm there. I did the backpacking in the Grand Canyon for 10 days in 2014, and it was great because I knew I was going to see some other things. But I think there was that added bonus of it being America. I still felt like there was a sense of this is my home, even though it was not exactly my home.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. We've been hit in some of the national parks, and even just being able to identify a maidenhair fern that was in Zion's park. And that was because I've worked with them as a florist or seen them. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's just growing, and I'm not ordering it in to work with it. It's just right there.
Right.
And so it's fun, and it's a little familiar while still being,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there what things should we be looking for as we talked about spring, the weather getting better? Are there certain species that you get excited about, or I know you're a big salamander guy, right?
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for salamanders, but there's just a handful of, like I said, handful of snakes in the area. So you're asking what
is there like
a short list? Yeah, there's a short list of sort of my bucket list. The two common salamanders, or the super common salamanders, the long-toed salamander that people find in their backyard or in their window well or something like that, which is about that long. What is that? 3-4 inches, and it's got a dark background with a yellow or green messy stripe down the back, sort of blotchy stripe down the back, with salt and pepper markings on the sides, and the long-toed refers to the fourth hind toe. That's pretty long. You have to sort of, relative to other salamanders. So, but it does look pretty long. But I'm really after, I always like to see the common stuff. There's the rough skin newt, less common. And it's sort of a weird disjunct. They're very widespread on the coast from central California up to probably British Columbia, all west of the Cascades. Just big swath west of the Cascades to the coast. And there's one dot in the Lake County.
Really?
Yeah, on the distribution maps in the field guide. Just doop. And I don't know, somebody may have 100, I don't know how many years ago, maybe brought one home and let it go. And now there's a population in Lake County, and they are a newt salamander with a brown dorsum, meaning their back and sides is of nice dark brown, and a very bright yellow belly, or orange yellow belly. And the top, if it's not breeding, the top is rough. It's like a lot of bumps.
Oh, interesting.
That's why it's called the rough skin newt. And it has more of like a toad skin. Same places you'd find the long-toed salamander.
So they like
cooler, wetter, damper, flipping logs. But it's more, I find that long-toads can be closer to town because they're just more widespread. But I'll find the rough skin newts out Idler's Rest, up on Pond 9, up on Moscow Mountain, and even at Virgil Phillips, I've seen them there. But really bright orange. They're very, you want to be careful. It's not like you get a lot on your fingers unless they're in their breeding mode in their water, and then the males are really slippery and mucousy, but they have super, super poisonous skin.
Oh, really?
Now, it's not going to hurt your skin unless you get it in your eyes, but there's people that, I think there's some records of people eating one and died on a dare, I think.
Yeah.
So they've got a pretty nasty neurotoxin. So wash your hands after you've held it.
That is interesting.
And on salamanders and frogs, you want to, I tell kids when I'm with them and they catch them, they need to keep their skin moist. So you want to wet your hands if you're holding them a lot, especially if you're letting a bunch of kids hold it. Because after a while, they're losing moisture because they're out of their microhabitat and they're not under a damp log. They're being exposed to the air, and your skin is dry and you're just sucking moisture. So I try to keep amphibians damp. I'm not freaking out. They can be out for a bit, but that's just showing some etiquette to the animal.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I really want to see is this very large salamander called the tiger salamander. And they're here, but I've only seen 2 in 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's not like they're super rare. It's just I think they're mostly in rodent burrows, and they can be up to a foot long.
Oh, my word. Really?
A foot, yeah. They can be up usually 8 to 9 inches, but they're very hefty salamanders. And I caught one in a seine at the Thorogold Stables back when I used to take the class out there. And then one other one, Sean Stewart caught where he was working out south of town. Somebody was digging the bank for a retaining wall, sliced through a burrow, and out comes this
huge salamander.
And so I want to see a tiger salamander. I have this uncanny bad luck sometimes on. Everybody knows at NSA that I've been looking for a rubber boa for like 20 years, and they're here. It's a snake. They're docile and brown, and
That's like the one snake that doesn't bother me.
Right.
Yeah.
They're super mellow.
We found one down by Orofino.
Everybody except me, Mike, has found one. I own one. I have a pet rubber boa. But, of course, somebody else, some kid at church caught it and brought it to me. It was a baby. It was like just a few inches long. It was like an earthworm. I've got it now. It's over 20 inches now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But but I have looked, this is the joke, I have looked under countless logs and rocks for 20 years in good habitat for a rubber boa. Just, in fact, yesterday, I was up on Kamiak Butte looking for them. And nothing. And it's just sort of ironic that I can't. And then people say, oh, I saw a rubber boa. Oh, I saw a rubber boa. Oh, I saw a rubber boa. And they weren't even looking.
Yeah,
they were just like seeing it on the trail.
Driving on a 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? That looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Don't tell me the next time you see one, or I'll throttle you.
Now, speaking of the rubber boa, does it have any relation to any boas?
Yeah, it's in the family Boidae, and it's probably the most high latitude boa in the world. Mm-hmm. And a Boidae is a very large group, and some of them, like anacondas, are boas. So some of the largest snakes, and a lot of the boas, they have these features that the expert knows, okay, this is a boa because of X, Y, and Z, but it's certainly not the color and overall size, or some are small, some are huge. And some of them look very, very different from each other, but there's these inscrutable characteristics that the expert, maybe internal anatomy that the expert knows, and it's not visible to the normal Joe. It's like, why is this a boa? Mm-hmm. You know? Oh, there's a external feature about it that is a boa, but generally just, it's a boa.
Well, you just don't think of Moscow as the place where you have, giant salamanders or, anything huge and poisonous. I kind of tend to think of North Idaho as pretty low down.
No rattlesnakes except down, actually in Whitman County and the Palouse, there can be some rattlesnakes up on the plateau, but it's usually closer to the breaks, which are the canyons that come up from Snake River or the Clearwater River. And so they can be up here, but I don't know why they're not up on Moscow Mountain, because it's not elevation. I mean, it really isn't elevation. I don't know what it is. It might be something to do with climate, because I know in Laramie, which is 7,100 feet, there's rattlesnakes there. There's rattlesnakes in places that are higher and very cold. I think it has to do with maybe, I just don't know. Maybe historically they were here, but the agriculture extirpated them. That's sort of local extinction.
It may just be God's kindness.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I thought they might be here a couple years ago, but then thinking through it, realized on Robinson Lake Road, I saw a rattlesnake dead, and I looked at it and it had no head. Oh. And I was like, I know what. It was farm equipment. Some baler from the down in the canyon had baled it, and it was a dead snake up in the machinery of the baler, and it fell out with its head decapitated. So I'm pretty sure that rattlesnake, I've never seen one. Of course, again, neither a rubber boa, but I don't think that rattlesnakes are here.
What about, I'm just jumping because I'm thinking
about
poisonous things. What about black widows? Because I was pretty sure we found one time, but do they actually live around here?
That's a good question. I know they're in the canyon, but I don't know if they're up here.
What about, you're a big turtle guy too.
Oh yeah, turtle.
What are some of the turtles that kids could find around here?
There's one turtle. Only one in all of Idaho.
No,
really?
Yes, it's ridiculous. The western painted turtle.
That's what.
So that's the one you see basking around on ponds and slow move. I've seen it in Paradise Creek, slow moving water. But yeah, the western painted turtle. Occasionally you might run across a red-eared slider because those were the popular pet turtles that people bought back in the day. They were cute little green ones with the red oval blotch on the side of the head. And then, so they've been spread all over the place just because of the extensive pet trade, and people release them. And so, yeah, sliders. I think there's a few sliders, red-eared sliders in Hordeman's Pond, but mostly native painted turtle.
There's a crossing on Robinson Park Road. It's really sad.
It's really sad because they drained that pond at Syringa, and then all of those turtles were sort of high-centered.
And they kept crossing the road.
They had to find another source of water, and they were beelining it to the other pond on the other side of the road, and that's why they were getting killed like crazy.
It was so sad.
Yeah,
We
it
would drive
was.
past and oh,
I saved several.
We stopped and pushed a turtle.
Yeah, yeah. And there's one other big salamander, but you have to go up in Laird Park, deep, about 8 miles past Laird Park, up in the shady, cascading streams where there's ferns and mosses and clear, cold running water. And there's the Idaho giant salamander.
Is it bigger than the tiger?
It's about the same size. Different looks a bit, but both beefy, big salamanders, but very different habitat. The Idaho giant is in those cool mountain streams. And then the other exotic is the tailed frog.
Does it really have a tail?
The males do, and it's not really a tail.
Oh, okay.
It's for reproduction. But only the males have the weird tail. Yeah.
Now,
so
you are into entomology. That was
sort of, herpetology was the first love, but entomology, I looked to get into grad school in herpetology, but there was really no openings at the time. So I went into entomology, and I was really glad I did. I was really happy with that detour.
Have you ever gotten into or thought about fly fishing?
It's funny how I'm not a sportsman. I admire sportsmen, but if it has it's weird, and I can't really figure it out, but if it has a practical, like for food, whatever, I don't have an interest.
Yeah. I was curious, I love fly fishing.
Yeah.
There was
great. I have done it,
There was Kirk Brower taught at Knights Fest, a thing on fly tying, but he called it practical entomology. That's what he called it. And I don't think a whole lot of people signed
Stone flies, mayflies, yeah.
Yeah,
but
Asa didn't know what it meant.
And I know why those flies work, but yeah, it's and I really think if you're a sportsman, it's really neat to get into the details of the biology or the ecology of these fish or these insects, because it makes you a more circumspect sportsman, and you learn you're not just out there.
Yeah. You think about, now this is the nymph, these fish are feeding on the nymphs that are coming
Exactly.
out.
You learn a lot. You learn a lot of biology if you study your quarry. And one of the things that, and I kind of consider myself a spokesman for those creatures that don't seem to have any practical use, because
mosquitoes.
Well, let's not go with the pest thing right now, because that's another can of worms. No pun intended, but it's there's so many creatures that really commend themselves to being part of ecology for our benefit, whether it's fish, for fishermen, entomology because you're wanting to catch fish. We all know deer, elk, all sorts of, and turkey. And so if there's a practical utilitarian use for the animal, we'll go, yeah, woohoo, we got it. We'll take care of it. There's conservation. There's a conservation mindset for those things that give us delight because we're sportsmen, like Ducks Unlimited, all of these conservation organizations. And so I'm sort of the voice for those critters that really don't have, there's no good cuts of meat for on it. You know, salamanders have no, there is an ecological reason because they may be an integral part of the food chain or food web, but no obvious direct benefits to mankind. That's why I wrote my book, Different Shade of Green, because it's God made it, said it was good, and that's why I say it doesn't have to justify its existence by being practical to us. It's great if it is practical to us, but then, it's already got some justification, or people will take care of it because it is practical. And there's all sorts of critters. I would say the vast majority of critters can't grab at some cool thing that they do directly for mankind. And so they've got a right to exist. Yeah. So that's the only thing I can figure out why I'm just, And plus, I didn't grow up. My dad wasn't a sportsman, so it's not in my DNA. Yeah. Although I have a rifle, and someday I might use it.
Well, I didn't grow up fishing, but I married a fisherman,
right.
So I learned how to become a fisherman.
Right. Great.
But I'm not fantastic.
Well, it is one of those things that I think gets you out there. Right?
It does get you out there.
For a lot of people and into these places where you then can observe different birds and different animals, and most of those things
plants
that I've experienced have been because I was out there, right? Whether it's sitting, trying to call turkeys in the spring or whatever, and then you just see everything else that's happening in the spring and what all's going on around you.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. One of the things I love about back in Michigan where I grew up, deer hunting, was being up in a tree stand, and about 10 minutes after you sit down, it's like the whole woods goes on as if you're not there. All of a sudden it's just the whole thing. You're like, wow, I'm just kind of observing.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
That's great.
Well, any other concluding thoughts on getting kids out and involved, or some things that people should be focused on?
We didn't really.
Well, I think most kids are automatically, I think innately, they like to go out and catch stuff. I think kids that are very cloistered are often, they may be naturally that way, but often it's because the family culture is, that's dirty. Don't touch that. It's dirty. I don't want you to track dirt in. And so there's nothing wrong with house rules, and go ahead and make sure you take your shoes off, whatever, but you don't wash your hands, great. But don't squelch that innate. If you have kids that innately love it, don't squelch it. Find out if there are harmful things, but don't just assume they're all going to kill you. You don't want, if you live in rattlesnake country, you don't want your kids to be picking up rattlesnake babies, Yeah. So you have to be cautious, but at the same time, don't be overly cautious. Don't be overly fastidious. So I would recommend that parents, if they're a little too tight-shoed about nature and thinking it's dirty, don't squelch that in your kids. And try to facilitate learning about it. Let them, a bucket of tadpoles is, and feeding them and seeing them metamorphose, that is a much better learning experience than an encyclopedia encyclopedia entry or a textbook life cycle. When you see it, that's why I do field trips with my students, is because when you see it, it's so much more indelibly put into your head experientially. And so kind of foster that appreciation, whether it's nature shows or getting out, finding stuff, and don't just be content with it's a frog, it's a salamander, but try to figure out what it is, because that also fosters a deeper appreciation. When you see there's diversity, God didn't just make one kind of bird or one kind of salamander or one kind of frog, he or one kind of beetle. There's, I'm happy when a student recognizes it as a beetle, but there's, 400,000 species of beetles worldwide. And there's a lot.
Yeah.
So be curious with your
curious.
kids.
Yeah. Be curious with your children and have it be organic. You don't want to be unless it's just not in you at all, then maybe you have to just kind of force yourself to appreciate it with your kids so that they're not stifled.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always fun.
Get out and enjoy the weather.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.